Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. After months of waiting, students receive their GCSE results. Top grades for many after a challenging year. Waiting lists hit record highs with over 5 million people awaiting routine hospital treatment. And city workers are not rushing back to the office. A study on July's figures shows less than 1 in 5 have done so. Another day of top grades as students receive their GCSE results. It's the second year official exams were disrupted by pandemic restrictions. It's meant grades were decided by teachers and pupils were only assessed on what they were taught during the pandemic. Overall top grades rose to 28.9% this year, a 2.7% rise, while grade 4 and above, which is equivalent to a C grade, rose to 77.1%, a 0.8% rise. The inflation isn't as large as the A-level results on Tuesday. School Minister Nick Gibb said pupils have been through an exceptional year. And Boris Johnson congratulated GCSE students. John Andrews, head of analysis at the Education Policy Institute, told NTD that lost learning in the last 18 months can't be ignored.
It's possible that the increases could have been managed a bit better if there was better, more timely guidance from government. But what's really important is that those increases don't mask the learning losses that children have experienced. We know that since the start of the pandemic, children are up to 2 or 3 months behind where they would be. So we can get into a discussion about the results going up and being the highest ever, but what government really needs to focus on now is helping those children into the next stage of education, and indeed helping younger pupils and making sure that they don't suffer as a result of the learning losses that they've experienced so far. During the autumn term this year, there was some recovery, but since then we've had another lockdown and children losing out on education again.
He said that lost learning because of the pandemic is likely to be felt for the next few years and is calling for more government investment. The NHS faces a backlog in care due to the pandemic. NHS England says over 5 million people are waiting for treatment. It's the highest level since records began in 2007. Here's NTD's Jen Well with the details.
The number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment is the highest it's been since records began in 2007. NHS figures in England show 5.45 million people were waiting to start treatment at the end of June. That's up from 5.3 million in May. The Health Secretary told Sky News he thinks there's probably some 7 million people that ordinarily would have come forward to the NHS that stayed away understandably during the height of the pandemic. He's called on people to come forward for treatment. Figures also show urgent cancer referrals have gone up by 50% compared to last year. Medical professionals have previously raised concerns that people have put off treatments because of fear of catching COVID-19. But it's not all dire news. Figures show that the number of people waiting for more than 18 weeks or a year are both down compared to in May. Official data shows there are currently almost 6,000 confirmed COVID-19 patients in UK hospitals, but questions remain around some statistics because of how a confirmed case of COVID-19 is recorded. Jane Warrell, NTD News, London.
COVID-19 tests such as PCR tests should be capped at £40, a Conservative MP has said. This comes as a watchdog looking into the testing market confirmed a review could take up to a month. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us more.
Chairman of the Future of Aviation All-Party Parliamentary Group, Henry Smith, wrote in The Telegraph, keeping the cost of PCR tests to a maximum £40 would allow more people to travel abroad. He added that would also help to put aviation back on a sustainable path to recovery. Currently on the government website, more than 100 providers offering PCR tests are charging £200 or more. It comes after Health Secretary Sajid Javid asked the Competition and Markets Authority to investigate the cost of travel PCR tests. The CMA said it would report its recommendations within the next month. A Department of Health and Social Care spokesperson said, "While we await the CMA's advice, the government will continue to ensure testing providers are held to account by the independent United Kingdom Accreditation Service." UKAS assesses the scientific and medical competence of organisations that provide testing as well as other services. On Wednesday, according to TTG Media, the chair of the Travel Select Committee, Hugh Merriman, wrote to the Health Secretary asking why only 25 or 6% of the 415 PCR test providers in the UK have been accredited by UKAS. A spokesman from Clear Group PR representing UKAS told NTD that as of Thursday morning there are just 48 fully UKAS accredited private providers of COVID-19 testing, with around 500 applications in process. We contacted the Department of Health and Social Care for comment on this, but did not receive a reply in time for broadcast. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
Office workers are reluctant to return to their desks. A study reports on average less than 1 in 5 were back at the end of July despite government calls to do so. City centres received a boost when COVID restrictions ended last month and nightlife returned. But data from 31 large UK cities shows only 18% of people have returned to their city centre workplaces. A report by think tank Centre for Cities says if workers don't return, the retail and hospitality sectors that usually cater for them are likely to struggle. That's especially as the furlough scheme ends next month. It says UK cities are still a long way off full recovery. And in other news, the government says China's largest gene company must register its prenatal test with UK regulators by the 1st of September if it wants to keep offering products in Britain. NTD's Trevor Piper has a story.
Chinese company BGI's genetic screening tests are currently available for sale in the UK, but Britain's medical regulator, MHRA, says these devices have not been registered. Junior Health Minister James Bethell says registration will be required from the 1st of September. It was previously reported that BGI Group developed its prenatal tests in collaboration with China's military. It uses them to collect genetic data from millions of women around the world, including in the UK. Some politicians expressed concerns over the company's links with the Chinese military. Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat says he fears the Chinese regime may be using the data to gain an advantage over other countries. But BGI says it produced the tests on its own and it has never shared data for national security or defence purposes. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
Europe's drugs regulator said on Wednesday it's looking into new possible side effects of COVID-19 shots from Pfizer and Moderna. The new conditions reported include kidney inflammation, an allergic skin reaction, and a renal disorder. The Europe Medicines Agency has not recommended any changes to the vaccine labels, and the watchdog did not give details on how many cases of the conditions were recorded. It said it's requested more data from both companies. Pfizer is by far the biggest supplier of COVID-19 vaccines to the EU with just over 330 million doses. Moderna has issued 43 million in the region. A recent study says no new cases of blood clots following vaccination with AstraZeneca's jab were reported in the last 4 weeks. That's after under 40s were not advised to take it. NTD's Clots Temenes has the story.
Scientists say no new cases of blood clots following vaccination with AstraZeneca's jab were reported in Britain in the last 4 weeks. That's after a decision to restrict its use in under 40s. The COVID vaccines made by AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson can lead to a rare side effect known as VITT. It's a combination of blood clots and low platelet levels. The condition had an overall mortality rate of 23%, but that rose to 73% in cases with clots in the brain. The study says around 1 in 50,000 under 50-year-olds suffered a side effect after they got the AstraZeneca jab. The researchers say they haven't seen new cases for the last 4 weeks or so. The study looked at nearly 300 possible cases and found 220 were possible cases of VITT. All the cases followed the AstraZeneca rather than the Pfizer vaccine. Multiple clots were found in around 1/3 of cases. Almost all those hospitalized with the condition experienced it between 5 to 30 days after the first dose. Toughens, NTD News.
A member of the committee advising on jabs says the number of 16 and 17-year-olds becoming seriously ill with COVID-19 informed the rollout of the vaccine to this age group. Professor Adam Finn noted 2 cases in Bristol over the last 4 to 6 weeks. It is unclear how many more teens were affected besides these 2. The latest research suggests children that become ill from COVID recover in less than a week, and that children are at a very low risk of becoming seriously ill from it. The expanded rollout makes the vaccine available to around 1.4 million older teenagers. The Pfizer jab is the only vaccine currently approved for this age group in the UK. Professor Adam Finn sits on the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation and is a Professor of Paediatrics at the University of Bristol. NHS England says nearly 16,000 16 to 17-year-olds have now received the jab. And as the UK is limiting COVID-19 vaccines for minors to 16 and 17-year-olds, how are other countries in Europe handling vaccinating children? NTD's John Robson gives us a roundup.
Portugal's health authority this week recommended that 12 to 15-year-olds should be vaccinated against COVID-19, and that ideally before the start of the academic year. About 400,000 youth can now get one of the 2 vaccines authorised for minors by the European Union's medicines regulator, Pfizer and Moderna. Where do some other European countries stand on this issue? Germany earlier this month started offering shots for children between 12 and 17. This despite the Standing Committee on Vaccination only recommending vaccinating 12 to 16-year-olds if they suffer from certain chronic illnesses. The committee says that not enough study results are yet available on possible long-term effects of the vaccines. Italy's government is urging regions to prioritise shots for 12 to 18-year-olds. It's an effort to vaccinate the majority of children before schools and sports activities restart across the country. Greece said in July, children aged 12 to 15 could be vaccinated. That's after inoculations of older adolescents began the same month. In Denmark, more than 1/3 of all children 12 to 15 have been getting their first dose. And in France, the education minister in July said unvaccinated pupils older than 12 will be sent home from school if anyone in their class gets COVID-19. The Netherlands gives children over 12 the choice to get a shot, but they are advised to discuss it with their parents. In Sweden, minors aged 12 to 16 can only receive a shot if they belong to an at-risk group or live with people at risk. The World Health Organization has said that children are not a priority for vaccination given the limited global supplies and because children face a much lower risk of severe disease and death. It has urged wealthy countries to stop vaccinating children and donate their doses to the developing world instead. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
Still to come, thousands of trains have been brought to a standstill as Germany's rail strike enters its 3rd day. That and more after the break. Further to yesterday's report on Poland's controversial media law, the bill was passed through Parliament after opposition MPs failed to adjourn the session. The government says the bill is needed to stop countries like Russia and China from taking control of Polish media. But opponents say the bill is an attack on media freedoms that will force American media giant Discovery to sell TVN24, the most watched independent channel in Poland. Earlier this week, thousands of Poles took to the streets to protest against the proposed changes. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington is deeply troubled by the bill. Now to Germany, where a train strike has entered its third day. Train drivers opted to protest after talks for a wage increase fell through. With thousands of trains cancelled, many passengers found themselves stranded. NTD's John Robson brings us this report.
Germany's rail commissioner says a dispute between operator Deutsche Bahn and the train drivers' union will not end soon, as the union's demands go beyond wage increases. The dispute became a nationwide strike, starting with freight trains on Tuesday evening and due to end on Friday morning. It has brought thousands of trains to a standstill, severely disrupting passenger and cargo traffic.
At 6 a.m. around 700 trains were not running, so we may presume a good overall result.
Train Drivers Union GDL organised the strike. It comes during the peak of the German holiday season and was arranged after talks with a major railway company failed. The union is requesting higher wages from German rail operator Deutsche Bahn. This amid increased demand for rail services following the ease of pandemic restrictions. Crowds of stranded travellers were spotted waiting for their delayed trains at stations across Germany.
The strike is understandable. I support it, but the problem is that there's hardly any information on the internet about it. It would have been nice to know in advance which trains are running and which aren't.
A Deutsche Bahn spokesperson said the company was trying to keep just 1 in 4 normally scheduled long-distance trains operational during the strike.
We need to restore mobility. People have to get to work, also in systemically relevant jobs, so such a strike is reprehensible.
GDL is demanding a wage increase of around 3% and a one-time pandemic allowance of £500. Deutsche Bahn says its position on pay is quite close to the unions, urging it to return to the negotiation table. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
Latvia is toughening up its border control as illegal immigration from Belarus increases. Several European countries that border the embattled nation are calling out the Belarusian government for encouraging the migrant flow. NTD's Natalia Nutting has the story.
Latvian border guards stopped a group of migrants attempting to cross the border from Belarus early Wednesday. Around 30 people were returned to Belarusian territory. A Latvian border spokesman says they were from Iraq. On Tuesday, the Latvian government declared a state of emergency in border areas, allowing military and police to support border guards. Baltic News Service says nearly 300 people have been detained for illegally crossing into Latvia from Belarus in just 5 days this month. It also reports that border guards, armed forces and police will instruct illegal immigrants to return to the country they came from and use physical force if they refuse. In neighbouring Lithuania, more than 4,000 migrants have crossed from Belarus so far this year. Its parliament voted to build a 300-mile metal fence topped with razor wire on the border between the countries. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania accused the Belarusian government of encouraging the migrant flow in retaliation for EU sanctions. Poland says it has also seen a rising number of Iraqi and Afghan migrants trying to enter along its Belarus border. Natalia Nutting, NTD News.
On Friday, the Berlin Wall will turn 60. For the occasion, a new augmented reality app was released. It allows users to experience one of the pivotal moments of the Cold War. NTD's Trevor Piper has more on this.
On the 13th of August 1961, the people of Berlin woke up to a new reality, one where they couldn't pass from the east to the west anymore. Soon, checkpoints sprung up, like the famous Checkpoint Charlie, where approved travel between the two sides of the city was possible. 60 years later, the Berlin Wall Foundation has released an app which takes users back to one of the pivotal moments of the Cold War, when Soviet and American tanks faced off against each other in October 1961.
Für die augmented reality haben wir uns entschieden, weil wir...
We decided to go with augmented reality because we think it creates a new perspective on this story. Unlike a video or documentary film, you can interactively be a part of it.
Kann man sich hier zur Geschichte interaktiv selbst verhalten.
Users can experience just how tense the situation was around Checkpoint Charlie at the height of the Berlin crisis.
Der Mauerbau war noch nicht lange vorbei und die
The building of the wall was quite recent, and the superpowers, Kennedy on one side for the US and Khrushchev on the other side for the Soviet Union, had not yet resolved the situation.
The 16-hour standoff threatened to spark a third world war. The foundation used videos, pictures and first-hand accounts from the time to recreate the events. The app also contains new information about the diplomatic talks that were going on in the background between representatives of US President Kennedy and Soviet leader Khrushchev.
Man befand sich, als das alles passierte, auch als der Mauerbau passierte.
So when all of this was happening and the building of the wall, they were in the middle of negotiations, how to deal with the new situation and the animosity between the two.
For the next 28 years, the Berlin Wall divided the city and became a symbol of the Cold War and the Iron Curtain. The wall was torn down on the 9th of November 1989. By then, it had left its mark.
The building of the wall shaped the city over 40 years. It shaped me because I lived for 19 years in the GDR and grew up there. And it shaped the people of Berlin and the whole German people.
The anniversary of the building of the Berlin Wall is scheduled to be marked by ceremonies on Friday. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
Tourism is heading back towards pre-pandemic levels in Moscow, largely fueled by domestic travellers. Solo travellers and small group tours, as well as a surge in digital booking and experiences, are on the up. NTD's Clots has the details.
The tourist landmarks of the Russian capital are busy again with tourists after almost a complete halt to travel last year. According to the Tourism Department of Moscow, the flow of domestic tourists is heading back towards pre-pandemic levels. In the first quarter of this year, 3.9 million domestic tourists visited Moscow, fewer than the 4.9 million who visited in 2019. The number of international tourists has dropped more dramatically, but some can still be found here.
The only thing I worry is on the way back I have to do a PCR, and if I get positive, then that 14 days, Traveling wise, yes, a bit worried. It's just because of the PCR.
Another growing trend is the digitalization of the tourism industry. Online tours, performances and museum programs were introduced this year. One area of tourism hit hardest by the pandemic is the hotel sector.
We do have tourists, although the situation is very unstable. For example, we don't have to go far. Since May, we have been seeing big interest from tourists from the Middle East, both in Moscow and the Metropole Hotel. This is the direction that prevails now.
Built over a century ago, the Metropole Hotel has witnessed many different periods, but this is one of the most difficult. Moscow's tourism department says the first half of the year shows that hotels have over 50% occupancy on average, just enough to sustain business. Moscow received 13.6 million tourists in 2020, which is 46% less than a year earlier. In 2019, the number reached a record 25.1 million. Clots, NTD News.
And from one version of Moscow to another, Russia's capital city may have a miniature competitor, a bustling metropolis made entirely of Lego. NTD's Adiekan has the story.
A miniature train clanks by on railroad tracks, bringing this bustling Lego metropolis to life. Situated in an old town on the outskirts of Moscow, the newly built miniature city stretches around 600 square feet in size. On display at a local Lego museum, its founders claim it's the biggest Lego city in Russia.
Each house is a masterpiece of architecture, not only outside, but also inside. Inside there are toilets, a bathtub, a shower, cribs, a ping-pong table, a billiard table. There are even attributes of our life, such as, for example, a real Lego chandelier.
The Lego city features a number of imposing buildings, including a Gothic cathedral made up of 22,000 parts. Some of them were designed and created from scratch by enthusiasts. Timur says he's especially proud of the gift sets that were originally given to their own employees by Lego. The sets are considered rare finds, but Timur hopes to get a full collection of them. The oldest exhibits are boxes from the 1960s and 70s.
We have a main rule in the museum, that we only buy new sets, sealed to preserve their amazing brilliance and complete newness, so to say. We open these seals ourselves, as it is very important for us.
The collection includes over 800 sets, including replicas of the Taj Mahal and Rome's Colosseum. Timur calls Lego the love of his life. He now shares his passion and meticulousness for the hobby with his wife, who became a fan of Lego after they met.
My husband really showed me that Lego can be interesting, not only for children, but also for adults. I became interested in studying the history of the company, in assembling. I love it now. At some point, it was my kind of meditation.
Lego, the Danish toy maker, celebrates its 90th birthday in 2022. Last year, Lego reported a sales increase of over 20%, while many retailers were struggling amid the pandemic. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
And that's the news for today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.